Gantz is chaotic and it immediately starts off that way. The first characters we meet are two students, the protagonist, Kurono, and another character called Masaru Kato. While they're waiting for a train, it's actually revealed that Kurono used to be friends with Kato when they were kids, and while Kurono is remembering this, a drunk old man falls onto the train tracks. Kato sees this and the first thing that we see with him is that he is scared. There's sweat beads dripping down his face, but after a couple of seconds, he gets down onto the tracks and tries to help this complete stranger. And Kurono, he's just watching all this as a bystander, thinking that Kato is crazy. Why is he helping some drunk homeless guy that no one cares about? And as these thoughts are racing through his mind, Kato is still struggling to lift the guy onto the platform. And then they make eye contact. Kato starts to call for Kurono to come and help him, and very reluctantly, he jumps down. They manage to get the guy onto the platform, but before they can escape, they are hit by a train and wake up in a room filled with strangers. There they see a black ball that is called Gantz and also meet some people. There's some middle school kid who turns out to be a sociopath and a girl named Kishimoto. They are then teleported to a random place in the city and have to hunt down an alien that looks like an onion. Everyone does manage to track down this alien and they end up brutally killing it. One thing leads to another and Kato and Kurono end up having to fight the father of this onion alien. They are extremely scared, but somehow they actually manage to defeat it. And because of that, they get teleported back into the room that they started from. Over time, we start to learn the rules and mysteries of Gantz. Some people who die are brought to this apartment and then sent out on missions to either capture or kill aliens. If they complete their first mission, then they're stuck in a cycle where they keep getting brought back to this apartment, and the only way to break free from this is to get 100 points through killing aliens while out on these missions. So it's set up as a game where those who have died have come back to life and are forced to battle aliens. The reason why I say Gantz is chaotic is because every time they are forced to do a mission, they are met with a completely different scenario and opponents than the last. And if that isn't enough, there's always some random people that they're forced to work with. Just with these two variables being constantly changed, things can get very wild very quickly. Like on the second mission, they battle against aliens that wear a mechanical suit that look like some random Japanese comedian. And their true form is a large deformed bird. The way they attack is to blind and deafen people with a bright flash from their mouth, and if they're taken out of their suit, then they die a few seconds later. The problem is that there's at least like a dozen of them running around trying to attack everybody. And oh yeah, let's not forget about the giant bird who's about 9 feet tall and looks like straight up nightmare fuel. There's a mission where everyone has to kill Kurono's girlfriend, and another one where they are facing alien dinosaurs. That's a sentence I never thought I would say. But the thing that brings all of this to another level is definitely the characters. In some series such as Chainsaw Man or Hell's Paradise, I got attached to the characters right away, but in Gantz, it was more of a slow build for me, which is okay because there's almost 400 chapters. Kurono at the start is competing to be one of the biggest scumbags in manga. He looks down on everyone and he's very self-centered. After this one mission, Kishimoto, the girl we met in the first mission, she doesn't have a place to stay. So Kurono, he lets her stay in his apartment, but it becomes very obvious he has ulterior motives. Kishimoto clearly likes Kato, and when she talks to Kurono about this, it makes him very mad. Plus the fact he doesn't get what he was expecting, he ends up shouting at her, and so she leaves. This is just one of the things that displays how much of an asshole Kurono is. He's really shitty, to be honest. But one of the key things about him in the beginning is that he has no connections with others. He lives on his own, and his family doesn't care about him at all. At school, he talks with people, but they aren't really his friends. He doesn't have anyone. He just isn't a great person. But during the first mission with the onion alien, it's clear he has something that others don't. It's hard to put into words, but his will to survive is powerful. It's like a spark of life, and when others see it, they can't help but want to try to survive too. That's pretty much the only admirable thing about him at the start of the story. On the other side of the line, we have Masaru Kato. Just from his actions in the first chapter, him saving a stranger, the picture that immediately gets painted is that he's altruistic. He helps people. And the way that this clashes with the situation that he's in is more interesting to me than what we see from Kurono at the beginning of the story. Kato is this caring and gentle guy, but that majorly conflicts with the life and death situation that they're put in. He doesn't want to kill anything, and so instead of using a gun that makes the aliens explode, he uses one that sends them somewhere in the sky. Wherever they go, I have no idea, but even while capturing aliens trying to survive, he's always trying to help people, to the point where it's very obvious he's very self-sacrificing. It's just in his nature. In the first part of the story, these these are definitely the two characters that I kept my eye on, and yeah, they're pretty much the focal point. The arc in the story where I started to like Gantz is the Buddha arc. Up to that point, Kurono had treated the whole situation lightly and was focused on trying to impress and get the girl Kishimoto. In a way, he tries to show up everyone, mainly Kato, to win Kishimoto over in some weird way, and to show that he's better. Kurono does do that in a way, taking down these huge, and I mean huge, Buddha statues. He ends up impressing everyone, but maybe even more important than that, he gives them hope. But in Kurono's mind, the only thing he thinks about is himself. He's still a shitty person, even if he's more capable than everyone else. Later on in this mission, they end up fighting an alien that's very strong, it can regenerate, and it really just makes everything else they've faced up to this point look like child's play. And this is where I saw a very crucial part of Gantz, the point where I was drawn into it. It's revealed that Kato has a little brother, and his parents died, so he has to take care of him. Already, that's bad enough as it is, but the place that they live at, their aunt's house, there they get treated very poorly. And so Kato saved up enough money to buy an apartment, and they moved in just before this mission. One by one though, everyone starts to drop like flies, facing this very strong alien. And near the end, it's up to Kato to somehow beat it. It seems so impossible, but if he wants to make it back to his brother, he has to. This fight is intense, and it gets a bit weird, but what I saw was a desperate, ugly struggle from Kato to try and survive, and most of all, to win. And that desperation is the thing that makes Gantz so great, because it feels real. And this is a turning point for Gantz. Now, bear with me for a sec, because this next part is really... I don't even know how to explain it. So, there's an arc in Gantz called the Shinjuku Massacre, where a guy called Izumi does blackface, and he goes on to commit the said massacre. Because of this, quite a few people get pulled into Gantz, and most of them are people we will stick with throughout the rest of the story. There's some guy called Kaze who wants to defeat strong people, and later he meets a kid called Takeshi. The reason Takeshi is there is hella messed up. His mom is very negligent and lets her boyfriend abuse Takeshi, to the point where he ends up being teleported into the Gantz room. And the only people who get sent to the Gantz room are people who have died, so yeah, screw this kid's mom and her boyfriend. Like I said, super messed up situation and all, but it's kinda sweet at first, because Takeshi thinks that Kaze is this hero called the Muscle Rider, and Kaze, this big tough guy, starts to take care of this little kid and becomes a father to him. I actually really like the bond between these two characters, and later down the line, I think we see a very wholesome moment between them. Well, I guess as wholesome as Gantz can be. But Takeshi sees Kaze training, practicing his own special move, and so Takeshi joins in on this, trying to imitate someone he looks up to so much. And this little guy actually starts to use Kaze's special move in missions when they're going up against aliens. So yeah, kinda wholesome, even if it did come out of a very messed up situation. But another character we see is this very famous idol called Rika, who seems to be known by just about everyone in Japan. She comes to really like Kurono, to the point I would even call her obsessed. We also meet an old man who lost his wife. He's pretty sweet, and he's actually able to help out more than you would think. But probably two of the most absurd characters in Gantz, at least when it comes to abilities, are Sakurai and Sakata, who mainly gets referred to as Master by Sakurai. Sakurai was thinking of ending his life. He faced bullying and sexual assault at school, to the point where he thought it would be better to die, or maybe take revenge on the bullies and end their lives. And so Sakurai talks to people about this online, and this is how he ends up meeting Sakata. Sakata goes to Sakurai's house, shows him that he's a psychic, and gives Sakurai psychic powers. So Sakurai goes back to school, and he thinks that he shouldn't use his powers on the bullies. But that ends up changing once the bullies go back to doing what they normally do to Sakurai. And if I'm being honest, I would say they actually get what's coming to them, because they do some very, very horrible stuff. So Sakurai pops something in their brains, and they all die. He doesn't get caught by the police because there's no evidence left behind. But Sakurai almost immediately regrets this. And so when he gets caught up in the mass shooting with his teacher Sakata and gets brought to Gantz, he takes it as a sign to save as many people as he can, because he did something terrible. Something I've noticed about myself is that I really like characters that have a more introspective side to themselves. Ones like Musashi from Vagabond or Thorfinn from Vinland Saga, they reflect on their actions and their goals while trying to figure out the best way to live. In Gantz, we don't get to see a whole lot of this. Instead of seeing Kurono's thoughts, we see his actions. One one day, because of a dare, he asks out a girl called Kojima, and to Kurono's surprise, she says that they should start out as friends. And this is where we start to see the beginning of Kurono's growth. It's never really shown what it's like when someone loses in Gantz. And so in one mission, Kurono is all alone, and he's facing these little white aliens that are actually pretty strong. And although he's afraid, he cleverly takes most of them out one by one until there's one left. And this little white alien has seen that all of his comrades have died and wants to take revenge on Kurono. He starts to adapt to how Kurono fights, and he actually starts to win, to the point where Kurono is very overwhelmed by this alien and can't do anything to finish it off, and loses on this mission. The only thing is that this alien follows Kurono to his school. He wears a disguise that looks like some random student, and then seeing as how Kurono took out his comrades, he felt it was only right that he took out all the random students that surround Kurono, thinking that they're all really close to him. This is a point in the story where Kurono doesn't take action, and he thinks it's someone else's problem. He leaves his class, he almost leaves his school, and most of all, he leaves everyone to die. But then he remembers Tay, and so he goes back, he rescues her, he gets surrounded by police, a whole bunch of them, and has to strategically kill this white alien without anyone else dying. It's honestly probably one of the lowest moments for Kurono throughout the whole story. But it's with this mission that he builds a strong connection with Kojima, his girlfriend. And something else that he didn't do at all before is that he starts to slowly trust people. And because of this, he falls in love with Tay and finds a connection that is more valuable than anything he's ever had. In his next mission after the Shinjuku massacre, he meets up with random people that got sent to Gantz. Once again, in this mission, he impresses everyone by accomplishing things that everyone thought was impossible. Because of this, everyone admires him and starts to follow in his footsteps. Kurono thinks back to what Kato had done throughout the missions, how he acted, how he helped people unconditionally, and so he starts to model himself after Kato. He makes sure that everyone can survive and starts helping people. He's no longer the same self-centered kid that we see at the beginning of the story, and he starts to think about others. He slowly but surely becomes a leader. Seeing how he affects other characters, helps them to survive, helps them grow, and brings them to another level with himself is what I found to be my favorite part of Kurono's character. He does do some shitty things, but you definitely see him become a better person. The final arc in Gantz is where we see Kurono's leadership and his newfound altruism really put to the test. But it's also a very weird arc for me. Things are constantly chaotic and crazy throughout the manga, but in the final arc, things somehow get crazier. That one idol girl Rika is so in love with Kurono that before the final mission, she clones him. So in the final arc, there ends up being two Kuronos running around, but the problem is that the duplicate still loves Tay. The clone of Kurono actually meets up with the original, and they decide that the clone should stay with Rika, make her happy, and love her. It's another pretty messed up situation in Gantz, and the way it ends for the clone and Rika kinda destroyed me. To explain the details of what actually happens in the final mission, there are a whole planet's worth of aliens that look very humanoid, who invade Earth to take it over, and in the process, almost wipe out humanity. It's an apocalyptic situation on a magnitude I've never seen before, and that aspect of the final arc is something I really like. Now, the aliens wouldn't completely wipe out humanity, but whatever survivors that remain would be put in zoos and kept as pets, because to them, humans are like bugs. To face the situation that's basically the end of the world, and to stay positive while doing it, to not lose hope, it's impossible. There are these huge ships that come down all over the world, and they almost cover a whole city. Now, that's definitely hyperbole, but you get the idea. At first, these huge mecha robots come out of them that are as tall as skyscrapers, and then the alien themselves are giants that are very strong and also have weird lightning powers. Plus, there's also some smaller ships that get sent down to kidnap people, and then once some people are captured, they get sent back to the main ship and are pretty much treated like livestock. The Gantz team doesn't know what they should do at first. Should they sit back and keep their loved ones close, or should they go and help people? Almost like what Kato and Kurono did in the first chapter. Luckily, all of them have faced the impossible again and again and again. So they go and fight these aliens. They counterattack, and then out of nowhere, a couple of Gantz teams are put into an even weirder situation than what they were in before. They are teleported to this white box with omnipotent aliens. Somehow Kato and Kurono get into an existential debate about life, about God, and the worth of humans and their emotions with these aliens. The aliens pretty much say that humans aren't anything special, and they aren't any different than wind or dust. The Gantz teams ask a whole bunch of questions, because who wouldn't when they're faced with beings almost like gods? And the aliens give out these very nihilistic answers. It really starts to get under everyone's skin. It almost seems like all their lives are meaningless, but one character keeps persisting and tries to find anything that isn't despair. Even after they somehow survive this meeting with these omnipotent aliens, they still have one final obstacle to go through. It was around here that I was reminded of a story that my English teacher told me from middle school. I barely remember anything from that class except for a few stories, clearly. This being one of them. When starfish are outside of water, they die. And on a beach where a ton of them wash up, there's a guy, let's call him Dave, who goes there every morning and throws any beach starfish into the ocean to try and save them. The problem is that there's tons of them. So much so that it would be impossible to save every single one. Another guy walks by seeing this and tells Dave that exact same thing. It's impossible. And when he asks Dave why he does it, honestly my memory isn't that good, so I don't remember what exactly Dave said, but it was something along the lines of he could at least get a few of them. I guess the moral of the story is that it isn't pointless to try. No matter what you meet in life, you should have hope. That's the main theme I saw when I was reading this manga. Hope. It causes people to keep trying to believe in something or someone. It makes people desperately struggle and face the impossible no matter what comes next. When Kato made eye contact with Kurono at the train station, he was hopeful. That's where it all started, but it kept growing. Slowly, more and more people started to believe in Kurono. From one person to a small group to a whole bunch of people on an alien spaceship, and as crazy as it sounds, to the whole world. Kurono didn't have anything until he met Tei, and then he realized that he had to do something to get back to her. Whatever it took, he had to do, and that started off with being hopeful. My overall feelings on Gantz are mixed. It has some great themes of hope and being altruistic, but there are points in the story where it feels like the author, Hiroya Oku, didn't have a direction to go with. I really like how Kurono becomes a leader, and Kato, well, he's really just a likable guy from the beginning. But for some reason, most of the characters in Gantz didn't stick to me as much as characters from other series have done, if that makes any sense. What I'm trying to say is that there's so many aspects to the story that Oku could explore, but sometimes it only feels as if he's scratching the surface on certain things. That's really the main point I'm trying to get across. Gantz is a manga that stands out in my mind, not because it's a masterpiece and perfectly written, but because it has a lot of moments I can praise it for and also criticize it for. Even in the final arc, where I really like the sense of chaos that's built up in it, there are quite a few problems. The way the whole Gantz system gets resolved with the omnipotent aliens is actually pretty stupid. And I haven't even mentioned the vampires yet. Yeah, they get introduced a bit before the final arc, and then a couple of them survive or something. I don't know. The last time we see them is at the start of the final arc, and they're not seen again. So we pretty much have no idea what happens to them. It's definitely one of the most random things in this manga that's all about aliens. They really shouldn't have even been in here. I do remember it turns out that Kurono's younger brother is actually a vampire, but overall the whole vampire stuff is just weird. The final fight is also pretty weird, at least when it comes to how it gets set up. When you think about it, it probably shouldn't have went down that way, but I do gotta admit it was kind of hype seeing the whole world cheer for Kurono. Aside from the plot, there's also the art. From what I've read, the background is actually made on a computer with 3D models. I don't know if it's related to the background or whatever, but there are just some god-awful stinky poo-poo pieces of CGI art in Gantz that I hate with a passion. The main one I can think of off the top of my head is in the final arc, where the Gantz team find themselves on the alien ship fighting some alien creatures. And let me tell you, those creatures look so hilariously bad. So bad. I also think there's some CGI when they're fighting the dinosaurs. So yeah, there's actually a few moments where CGI art is used, and yeah, it just doesn't look great. I actually like the art for the most part, but yeah, the CGI stuff just looks out of place. Somehow for me, Gantz sits at both ends of the spectrum of being completely dog poop and having some great moments. There are quite a lot of aspects I don't like, but I'll take what I can get out of the story because at the very least, it is interesting. Even though I have a few problems with Gantz, I like the message of having hope throughout everything. And Kurono's development isn't perfect, but what I saw felt satisfying. I know it's been a minute since my last video, but from now on, there shouldn't be a huge gap between uploads, unless I'm working on a huge video. I'm not gonna lie, one of the main reasons this video has taken so long to come out is because I just got into Breath of the Wild like, what, a month ago? And I sunk 2 weeks into that game and beat it in that time. I was really on no Gen D life hours while I was playing that. I also want to say thanks for 1K subs. I might have something special planned for it. I know we hit it a while ago, but it's really just crazy to me that there's that many people that subbed. So yeah, thanks. Also, thanks for watching and have a good night, day, whatever. Peace.